line, and we've got Dan and Garrett and Kent and Reagan. Am I missing anybody?
Dennis is on and Doug is on.
Excellent. Via Zoom. Perfect.
I think Dennis is still on. Oh, maybe.
Yeah. Yes, I am here.
Okay, great. So the first thing on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes from the August meeting, which was last month, when Dan so graciously zoomed in so that we could approve meeting minutes from the past 4 meetings and get another vote completed. But that was the meeting last month also talked about the Route 202 TIF and the Monmouth Museum application that we got approved.
So do I hear, do we have any feedback on those meeting minutes from any of the members? By the way, Dan, thank you very much for taking time out from the airplane crash in Litchfield to complete our requirement for a quorum that day.
Yeah, no problem.
So any feedback on the meeting minutes? Do I hear a motion for approving the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes of the last meeting.
And do we have a second?
I will second it.
Garrett is seconding.
All right, so we have a motion from Dan to approve the meeting minutes with a second from Garrett. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Ken says aye. Garrett, I'm assuming.
Aye.
Garrett
Doug-
says aye.
Doug says aye.
I was gonna say, Doug is Doug now a member of this committee?
Yes.
Wonderful. And Dennis.
Dennis doesn't get to vote.
He's
I don't
muted.
vote.
Right,
There he goes.
right, got it, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda, so there's been a lot happening in the past 48 hours for the town of Monmouth. On the agenda, it says vote to recommend the Route 202 TIF district to the select board. So as you recall, last month, we talked about the properties that were going to be in the TIF district and kind of got that nailed down, and I was working on the application. And I'll say, I'm going to take full responsibility for this. I did not understand the process for the town meetings. I thought that the town just had an election like it would for any other municipality. Justin and I spoke the other day, and he indicated that in order to have a warrant and a ballot for a town meeting for November, they would have needed to let the state know that, because there's nothing else on a municipal ballot for this November. All there are the state questions that the town's going to be voting on. So what does that mean? So we could rush this through and have a public hearing and have the select board vote on it on October 4th. And try and get the warrant printed for November. However, the other option is there is a primary election in March that would still allow us to capture the OAV that we need to capture. All we would need to do is write a request to the state and say, we are having an election on March 5th. And instead of calling a special town meeting, we would like to ask for an extension for putting in our TIF district. The usual deadline is March 1st. always grant those allowances because they don't want to put more burden on the town than they have to. But that would allow us to still, to kind of get everything put together so that there aren't any mistakes and still capture the OAV as we have intended to do for those properties on Route 202. So I guess at this point, I'm suggesting that we do wait until March instead of trying to rush this through for November.
Reagan, we have 2 weeks before the select board could meet and hold a public meeting for the TIF district that we intend to propose. What are some of the challenges in those 2 weeks that would cause concern?
I'm letting Doug back in while I'm speaking to you. So an amendment and a new application are different. You need a lot of input from the assessor to get a new application kind of done correctly and the mapping. And I did talk to Donna today. I think that Justin has a concern about getting the warrant and the ballots printed in time for the meeting. And his impression is that the select board is not well versed in this concept. And so he just wants to make sure everyone is comfortable and has the time that they need to digest this new district. That was, I never like rushing TIF districts through because people start thinking that there's something happening. Because we have the ability to still submit it in March without there being any type of penalty, recourse for doing that. That's why I recommended that we just make sure everything was done correctly and no one feels rushed or pressured to get it in for the November election.
My 2 cents, I think that's a good idea. Especially with making sure all of the various election pieces are together. For what it's worth, my 2 cents is, wait and do it right rather than try to rush it.
I agree.
Other thoughts?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with holding off. So would the March 5th is just the deadline to get it on the June ballot? Is that the thing?
You have I don't know if it's a presidential primary in March. There'll be a vote in March.
Oh,
An
okay, so
election
it'll be on that.
in March. Yeah, so there'll be an election in March that will be a municipal election. And at that point, again, now that I understand the process for getting it on the ballot, although it won't be an issue because it's a municipal election this time.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with do we need to put that to a vote or we just make that known in the minutes?
I think because it's part of the minutes, maybe we just take a motion from whomever might want to do that, to table the item until a later time.
Is there, it being a primary, and if you're registered as an independent, you don't get to participate in the.
I'll interrupt you. There's a new law that's
Okay.
going into effect next year that allows independent voters to participate in the primary. They can
Okay.
vote for either, so they can participate in the primary.
Okay, fair.
So do I hear a motion to table?
Yeah, I'll make the motion, we table the, I don't know what you call it, the tip district for Route 202, to next year for the March primary.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion from Dan to table that item with a second from Doug. All those in favor? Kent says aye.
Doug
Aye.
says aye.
Thank you.
All right, Reagan, what's next on our agenda?
Next on the agenda is the other reason why this may be an incredibly busy time for the Economic Development Committee. So, in late August, I was approached by Kevin Rose of Wish Rock Affordable Housing Developers out of Portland. He has an interest in is it 1069 Main Street? The big the 30-acre property that's for sale on Main Street. I don't know that I have the address exactly correct. But does everyone know which one I'm talking about?
Well, there's a 32-acre parcel, which is Guy Piper's land.
That's the one.
okay.
Yes, that's the one. It
Sale
is.
for 400,000. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one. And it is 1063, my mistake, 1063. So Kevin, there is a very popular program through Maine Housing called the Rural Affordable Rental Housing Program, which is a tax credit program. And he is looking to put up to 18 apartment units on that property at 80% AMI, which for a family of two would be about $55,000 income for a family of two. He has a gap in his funding and has requested that if the town would consider a credit enhancement agreement for this project. So the reason that this has gotten so kind of involved in the past few days is because the application is due in December. And so he would need to have a credit enhancement agreement granted to him by the town in the next 6 weeks in order for him to make it for this application. The reason it's important in the application is because Maine Housing awards points for outside funds that are going to contribute to a project. And since these programs are so competitive, developers win or lose the tax credits by 1 point sometimes. I mean, it's just incredibly competitive program. So I am kind of introducing this to this committee and letting you know that we would need to obviously have Kevin come here, present his idea and requesting a credit enhancement agreement for this property. If this group wants to recommend that to the select board, then the select board would need to hold a public hearing, 10-day notice, and then the select board has the authority to grant credit enhancement agreements within the CMP TIF district. So there's a lot going on. It's a big decision, and we don't have a big time frame to do that. So
The townspeople don't have to vote on it.
correct. because your TIF district allows the select board to negotiate and grant credit enhancement agreements within the CMP TIF district. So for any property, if a business wanted to come to you and say, this is what we're offering, and we have this gap in our funding and we're looking for a partnership with the town, the select board would have the authority to grant that.
Okay.
So that's a lot. That's a lot.
Reagan, that 32-acre parcel is already specifically identified in the CMP TIF district as a parcel that could receive a enhancement agreement if the select board were to approve it.
Right, it is in the CMP TIF district, so it is eligible for a credit enhancement agreement, like any other property in that district.
Okay. And in order for us to consider this proposal, the Economic Development Committee would need to convene in the next week or two prior to the, not tomorrow's meeting of the select board, but prior to the one in 2 weeks, so that we can either make a recommendation or not to the select board. Is that correct?
So I need to talk to Kevin about his timing and when he would be ready. What I was looking at, we definitely can't wait until our next meeting. I guess I would say the Economic Development Committee can't wait until their next meeting. I'm going to talk to our TIF attorney to see if she would be able to draft, again, this is all if she would be able to draft a credit enhancement agreement. I think we have probably until the October 18th meeting to make this happen, which is, you have a select board meeting on the 4th and then the 18th. Again, we're already rushing this. I just want to make sure that we have a little more time to make sure everyone is comfortable and heard, and that we have time to get the 10-day notice out and make people aware of the opportunity. So I guess what I'm saying is I would recommend the 18th. And I need to check back with Kevin to make sure that he can get here and talk to you, the Economic Development Committee, as well as coming to that select board meeting where he would need to present to the select board his request.
Okay. Can you just describe for us what the 80% figure means? I mean, I heard you say 18 apartment units that would be for rent. I'm assuming that the what would be charged, what would be the rental amount would be limited to folks of a certain income. Is that correct? How does that program work precisely?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty regulated, actually very regulated. And so what this program targets, what he gave me for numbers, I haven't checked on this. It will serve households up to 80% of area median income, which is currently $52,000 for a 2-household family. So a 2-person household
Shut off the audio, Kitty.
wouldn't be making more than $52,000 in order to qualify for this housing. He is intending to have.
It'd be max of 52,000, I said.
Right, yes, that's what yes, absolutely, yes, not minimum, max, thank you.
52,000 or less for a two-person household.
Correct.
Correct. Um,
Assuming, Rick, that the rent would be some portion of that person's income, not necessarily some fixed figure.
You hear anything going on?
I'm not clear about that.
How is the, yeah, I guess my question would be, and maybe this is one for a later time. The answer might be for a later time, is like, how is the rent then calculated?
I'm writing that down, for a question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hypothesis at this point, but I think main housing has certain parameters for a percentage of your income can be dedicated toward household expenses, and whatever that income is, in order to participate in the main housing financing process, it's a 33% or 30% of household income, whatever it is, it's a percentage of that. And then main housing through their financing for the difference.
That sounds correct. But I would like to confirm how that works, but
Yeah.
yes.
If we can find out for the next meeting, maybe we can get a little more precise than that, but and I think that's probably why this particular developer is coming to the town with a gap in his budget, is because it's highly what he can charge on the revenue side of his business model is highly regulated. So it's not just he's limited to who he's looking for, but he's also limited to what's the maximum he can charge them.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
And so that's why he's coming to the town to say, hey, look, would you be interested in a credit enhancement agreement? Reagan, can you also tell us exactly, maybe walk us through exactly what a credit enhancement agreement means?
Sure. So for this district, a credit enhancement agreement is when a developer creates value on a property, that new value, the taxes from that new value are eligible for a credit enhancement agreement, which is where the town agrees to reimburse the developer a portion or all of the new taxes from the value that was created on that property. And the idea is that a developer asks for taxes back when they are when not doing so makes the project not feasible. In other words, they're asking for this as the way for them to make this project go forward. And usually there are extenuating circumstances, like at the Gardner Business Park, back 20 years ago, a developer started to break ground for something and ran into a bunch of ledge. And that wasn't in his pro forma to, have to blast through a bunch of ledge. So he went to the city and asked them for a credit enhancement agreement so that he could create value in the city with their assistance. In this case, for affordable housing developers, this is also not uncommon. And the idea would be that this developer is bringing something to the town, specifically housing, much needed housing, affordable housing for Monmouth, which we would hope would, one, increase the number of people who live in Monmouth, and or maybe some of the people who live in homes in Monmouth who don't want to maintain homes anymore, but also don't want to leave the area, might be able to transition into, freeing up housing stock for other families that might want to move to Monmouth. So those are the ways you kind of want to think about what's the value for the town In this case, it would be housing, which is desperately needed everywhere. So this town would maybe interested in incentivizing that so that there could be housing, more housing in Monmouth. Did that help?
Yeah, my understanding is that, within the TIF district, when value is created within this CMP TIF district, because it is a TIF district, the town has the additional value with and from state obligations, the town would no longer, because it's TIF district, the town no longer has a basis that's increased by the increase in valuation. Does that make sense?
You cut out a little bit, Kent, but I think what were you talking about how the value is sheltered by the state, from the state?
Sorry if my connection is a little faulty. I'm talking about how the value is not only sheltered from the state, but also sheltered from the county obligations of the town.
Right. So, however, for the CMP TIF district, yes, that is correct. Half of the new value in this TIF district is sheltered from the state. In other words, for any TIF district, when you have new value in the TIF district and you, what we call, capture it or make it a part of the TIF district, the new value is not considered as with part of your municipal valuation. So your municipal valuation does not increase by the total amount of the new value in the TIF district. And that's important because your municipal valuation is used in state funding formulas to determine how much aid to education you get, how much revenue sharing you get. And the county also looks at it and says, oh, Monmouth is richer, so they can pay more of the share of the county taxes. So from an outside perspective, Monmouth doesn't want that number to go up because there are all kinds of repercussions in terms of state funding and county tax share. Internally, it's great if it goes up as part of a TIF district, because we can take those new tax dollars, hide them from the state, legally hide them from the state. But the catch is that we have to use them for economic development purposes. And one economic development purpose would be to incentivize a developer to put new value into the town. So that's a good use. Instead of giving half of every new tax dollar to the state because they're giving us less aid to education and now the town has to make up for that loss, we can keep all of the tax dollars and use it for specific purposes as allowed by statute. One of them being to incentivize developers or businesses to bring good things to your town.
Now, in the past, the town has done similar credit enhancement agreements.
I think you have one credit enhancement agreement as part of the CMP TIF district. But yes, and I think that's Dan's. But what I want to say about this, which makes it a little tricky, and I will be happy, I had to explain this to Kevin, this developer, and I want you guys to understand it. In the case of this TIF district, again, the town decided to only capture 50% of the new value of the entire TIF district, which means that half of the new value is hidden from the state. The other half of the value was added to the municipal valuation. And the town decided to do that because they wanted to have some of those tax dollars freed up for costs that you take out of your general fund. So those new taxes went to your general fund. And the town felt that that's where they needed those new tax dollars. They needed them to be freed up so they could use them however they wanted to in town, which is fine. But when you're talking to a developer, basically, he will put a property on there that, say, is valued at $1 million. Because we only capture 50% of that value, his share is only, what he can work with is only $500,000. So he only can realize the taxes on $500,000 of the $1 million value that he put on that property. Usually, when you do a credit enhancement agreement, towns like to, it's standard to kind of give a 50% credit enhancement agreement. In other words, a developer would get half of their new taxes back. And the rationale for that is that if you didn't TIF the district and you had all of that new value added to your municipal valuation, the tax shifts would result in the town getting about 50 cents on the dollar, okay? So if there were no TIF district on this $1 million investment, the town would get, at the end, would get about half of those new taxes in their general fund, because they would have to make up for losses with school subsidy and revenue sharing, and they'd be paying more in county taxes, okay? So if you don't have a TIF district and you just let the value go on to your municipal valuation, you net about half the new taxes. So if you create a TIF district, the thought process is, well, we would be losing 50% of the new taxes anyway, but instead we're going to keep all of the taxes because we put it in a TIF district, and we're going to incentivize this developer. We're going to use this money locally for economic development purposes and give him or her 50% of their taxes back. That's kind of a break-even point for most towns. They say, you know, we can give it to the state or we can give it to the developer. We're going to give it to the developer. Some projects warrant or ask for even more than 50% of the new taxes because they might be doing extraordinary things like bringing 100 jobs to the area or 500 new apartment units or something like that. But what I've explained to this developer is the best we can do if you want to make the argument that that the town give you back as much taxes as you can get, it will only be 50% because the TIF district only captures 50% of those new taxes. It's really confusing. I don't want to have people's eyes glaze over, but he understands that he has an upper limit of 50% of the new taxes. So he might come to you and say, I need 100% of those TIF district taxes, which would only be 50% of the taxes. Have I confused everyone thoroughly? Yes.
Yep.
Reagan, what I'm hearing you say is that the most the town would be wise to to consider. What we've done and although the building is currently owned by Dan, when we actually did the TIF district, it was built by Mark. What we've done in the past is essentially taken the county and state tax benefits of TIF district and given them to the developer.
Right.
And we would consider doing that because we see the benefit to the town of helping this project move forward,
Correct.
right? And in this particular case, it's because it's about affordable housing. There is no affordable housing on that, not currently. Very difficult to find subsidized apartments. So the prospect of a potential of 18 subsidized rental units in a part of town that would be fairly easy to access for some of our local businesses, in a part of town where we've already indicated we would like some more concentrated development. I mean, I don't know Kevin, and I don't know exactly what he's proposing, but I'm interested in hearing more.
I think that is fair. And I told him that tonight I was just simply going to be kind of generally presenting this idea, but it's really his, proposal to pitch, I guess I would say. And so I think it's completely appropriate for this group to kind of agree that in the next couple of weeks, we may need to come back together for a special meeting to move this forward, or I guess allow him to come and talk about what he's needing to get done so that this group can make a recommendation to the select board.
I have two questions.
Go ahead, Derek.
So initially you said that there's some sort of points or incentive that the state is going to award these different contracts to based on that kind of system or whatever. So what is that? So it's enhanced if the town provides more?
Yeah, so Maine Housing has this scoring system for all of their different scoring systems for all of their projects. Sometimes it says, we want essentially, we want you to have a TIF district created and a credit enhancement agreement so that they can see that there's buy-in from the town. They just have different criteria. I read the criteria for this one, and it awards up to 3 points for outside money being committed to the project. It doesn't specify where, but his request is that that he receive a credit enhancement agreement as part of that. And he talked to Maine Housing, and they said that it would need to be finalized. The credit enhancement, it wouldn't even be able to be kind of a wink and a nod. It needs to be officially signed, finalized by the time he puts his application in December.
My second question is, and it's kind of two-parter, but so in the incentives of the TIF district, you know, I understand the 50%, if we didn't have TIF district, we're giving it back to the state anyway, just to, you know, kind of for a variety of reasons. What if, so it's in the TIF district now, of course, we're getting the benefit of the 50%, but we don't need to give it all to the developer, right?
You don't have to, no, you don't have to.
We can give up to 50% and then we could keep the rest?
What happens because of the way this TIF district is set up? Usually, when you create a TIF district, you would hide all of the value from the state. That's 100% capture. The town would capture 100%. As I said, in this TIF district, the town decided that they only wanted to capture 50% of the new value. So the town already gets a portion of the new value into its general fund. So if he puts $1 million property on there, the town will get taxes from half of that value put into its general fund automatically, because half of that value is not part of the TIF district. Okay, so that's what I was trying to say to him was, this is a 50% TIF district, so there's no way you can get more than 50% of your taxes
Okay.
back. Like this committee would need to say, we'll have to figure out what his need is.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
he has an ask, but if it is that he needs X number of dollars a year, the town would need, we or you, the Economic Development Committee, would need to recommend to the select board whether or not you wanted to give him, if you thought this was worthy enough, and he has proven his case.
So, and if we give less than the 50%, that would go to, typically, you're saying in the deals, typically all of the incentive goes to the developer. If we gave less than that, would that be in the town?
That would be in the TIF, that would be in the TIF
It would go into the
revenues.
TIF fund.
Yeah, TIF funds, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reagan, I do have one request for when you speak with Kevin about potentially approaching the committee. And that would be that he bring us some renderings of what it is that we're not talking construction design, we're talking concept design. Some renderings of what he is imagining this might like.
Mhm.
Yeah, or other area things they've developed, something similar.
Okay. Anything else up front?
Well, the reason I'm asking for rendering, and just so that Kevin is aware and so that everyone on the committee is aware, is, that stretch of 132, that stretch of Main Street is the entrance to. And so it needs to be, I'm sure we will hear it if it needs to be welcoming and attractive.
Also, Reagan, that's a recreational trail that goes right through that property. It's an ITS connector trail for the snowmobile club, major artery. So if there's any way we can convince him to work with us, even if we have to reroute it a little bit, it'd be nice if we can still maintain a trail system, which could be advantageous for selling point, for an apartment building to have a trail system going through their yard for any outdoor recreationists.
Doug, are you aware of any other uses or history on that parcel of land?
I'm aware of the history of what's gone on there in the past. I don't see anything, as you were suggesting, it needs to be a a welcoming or a good appearing set of buildings, or however it's going to be structured. And I guess I'd have to wait until we saw the developer wanted to do.
Would you be satisfied if he brought some what are called concept designs, which are just sort of their drawings of you know, the what the building might possibly look like, not construction documents, not anything specific with measurements or anything like that, but just concept design type documents? Would that be the place to start for you?
Yes, I don't, yes. I lost you. Yes, it would.
Are there any incentives for the town if we're putting public housing in terms of other considerations?
In terms of like what?
I would just think that there's probably, I mean, maybe the incentives are from main housing and they're going. I was just thinking that if the housing stock has a large percentage of this type of housing, you may be eligible for additional tax credits or something. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't know what the if there are any other incentives around it. I will find out.
Well, certainly, Garrett, one incentive is that we would be able to realize 50% of the increase in value in our tax basis on a property that right now is probably being taxed as open space or something like that.
I was just getting greedy, so.
That's okay.
And of course, you know, I mean, it's not a financial incentive that is easily measured, but I think Reagan is right in terms of recognizing that affordable housing doesn't exist in Monmouth, and that limits what our current residents who might be looking to shift down but stay in Monmouth. It limits what their abilities are, and it also limits for many of the local employers who are looking for inexpensive or affordable labor. It limits what sort of labor pool Monmouth has to offer. When we don't have affordable housing, it's hard to live and work in Monmouth.
A couple meetings ago, there was talk about the sewer or the current system in Monmouth is basically overloaded, I think was a description.
Oh, no. Other way around. The current system is underloaded and looking for ways to broaden how it covers its overhead. So this particular TIF district was designed with the sewer system and the water system as well in mind. And that actually might be another question for Kevin when he comes to talk to us, which is, I think he's probably going to be required to connect to the sewer system. But another question would be, would he be connecting to the Monmouth Water Association's water system, which has a main right there in the road. He's not required to connect to the water system, but I'm sure they could certainly use some additional accounts to help cover the overhead cost of running their 250 household system. So yes, this is one of those ways where, the additional use might actually be beneficial to existing account holders who are currently connected to the sewer system and currently connected to the water system, because there are certain fixed costs that have to get paid. And if you can spread it over more member household, then that's a benefit to everyone.
And speaking of concept design, if it's a single structure with 18 units, he may be required for a sprinkler system. So he may have to tie into the system rather than put in holding tanks and, all that stuff. So there's more information that needs to be, heard. So just to move this along, I think we should definitely invite him to a meeting. I think it's good for us to be a sounding board ahead of the select board meeting to have him pitch it to us first, and then based on that we can make our recommendation to the board.
Okay, Reagan, do you need a vote from us for that, or do you want to just go ahead based on a sort of consensus conversation?
I think I have what I need, and I would just ask that all of you kind of stay tuned, since we'll be trying to organize a meeting that's not our regular meeting in the next couple of weeks, so that we can hear this. I'll just say, with all of these questions, the reason I'd like to do this early and get everything planned is because there may be some things that he doesn't, in the process of kind of planning this out, doesn't have all the answers to right now. And if there are things that we feel are non-negotiables in terms of the design of the building, all of these things, there's no way for us to legally require him to do anything in this planning stage. And there's just, so if there are things that we want to kind of put into the credit enhancement agreement that are what they call clawbacks, so that if he says he's going to do something and it's important to Monmouth and he doesn't end up doing it, we can retract the agreement. You know what I'm saying? Because this is so early in the process, and he probably doesn't even know exactly what the building's going to look like, for example. I just want us to be thinking about if there are certain things that are non-negotiables that are very important for Monmouth, that would make or break this deal. We would want to know what those are, communicate them to him, and make sure that they're in the credit enhancement agreement, which is the legally binding document for returning taxes, if we get that far. Okay, so
that's and I think we should end the conversation on a positive note. This is an opportunity that we didn't have yesterday, so it generally, I would say, is good news, and I'm encouraged to hear that someone is investing in Monmouth or interested in investing in Monmouth.
that's right, absolutely. Okay. The next item, again, I don't know if this is, I had on here publicizing the town business offerings. And the reason I had that was because Justin went to the KV COG conference today. And as you all know, Monmouth has kind of some offerings that we can give to business, including certain businesses, including a revolving loan fund. We have TIF districts. We have our facade grant program. I've been trying to chase down KV COG for a long time. They've had a new executive director. They haven't returned phone calls. So Justin was going to get me the person so that we can get the revolving loan fund back on track and something that can be publicized to the business community in Monmouth. So I guess I didn't hear, Justin and I were dealing with this today and talking with Kevin Rose. And so neither one of us connected about who that new KV COG person's going to be to connect us. But I guess all I'll say about this is that I am hoping in the next month, now that Justin is part of the KV COG board, that we will have an in with this group and be able to really solidify these offerings and get them publicized to the business community and people who are interested in coming to Monmouth to start businesses.
Sounds good to me. Make it happen.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I wish I had more information about that at this point, but as I said, we were kind of going back and forth about Kevin Rose all day, so that got pushed to the side.
Sure. All right, what other business do we have?
There's other business on here, but I didn't have anything to add.
Anyone else have other business?
Actually, something came up during my lodge meeting with the Masons about the facade grant, building improvements, and I think Mark was going to get with you, Reagan, or maybe Justin, to just inquire about the fact that that building doesn't fit in the current TIF district. And I know I brought this up in the past because we do have a roof that's visible from the road that's going to need repairs probably next year. And they were just questioning if they can apply, and I thought they could apply. Am I incorrect in that?
They can apply. They would need a special allowance from the select board. Basically, the select board would need to vote on that. But yes, we've had Jack's Traps and other businesses that aren't part of the TIF district who have taken advantage of the facade program.
Yeah, I think Mark just felt that, or maybe he was under the understanding that because it was outside the district, he felt or had heard that the district was full and therefore they would not be able to apply. And I thought that was incorrect assumption.
No, that's Mark Burgess.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll if he doesn't reach out to me, I'll reach out to him and kind of discuss that with him. Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
While we're on that topic, Reagan, has the state finally approved our language revisions for the CMP TIF district?
I was talking to them about that last week. The administrator took a vacation in the beginning of September and is getting back up to speed on everything. So I think it should be soon.
Okay. Was the facade improvement language changes, were they part of that revision, or was that a separate initiative?
The facade improvement grants are funded by the TIF district, but they weren't substantially changed with the amendment at all. There was nothing that was changed around the facade grants.
Okay, so we don't have to wait for the state to approve language in order for us to assume that the facade improvement alterations that we made last year are in effect.
Right.
I mean,
That's-
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that whatever was part of the amendment 1 is still in effect.
Okay.
Ongoing.
So then, if my memory serves, Dan, there is no geographical footprint requirement on the facade improvement, and the roof in question simply needs to be visible from the street for it to be eligible for a facade improvement grant.
Right. Yeah, and we were talking about doing just one side of the pitch roof, and Mark was just throwing out a possible figure of $15,000. So, I guess if they apply and the board approves it, we'd be looking for what, 50% of that figure for assistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was my understanding as well, but I think Mark was still gonna just look into it just to be sure. So at our next Mason meeting, we can report back. So if you guys don't hook up, I can certainly discuss that. And then
I'll send him the facade application and kind of highlight where it says that, because that's what we worked on last year as a committee. Was making that clearer and kind of revamping it. So
Okay.
I'll send him
Yeah,
the application and we can look at it.
Okay, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Any other bit? Well, thank you all for coming meeting then. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion we adjourn because my hand is getting tired.
I was just saying, that's a workout.
Thank you for connecting us, Dan. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, yeah.
Garrett,
Yes.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oh.
Aye.
Take care, everybody.
Be well.
thank you, Dennis.
See you, sir.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.